The Author's Shelf.
The Author's Shelf.
The Author's Shelf. The Author's Shelf. It's about books and stuff.
Good afternoon, I'm Georgie Donaghy and welcome to The Author's Shelf. You can tune into today's show via the 2SR.com.au and clicking on Listen to 2SR Live Online tab or via the TuneIn app on your mobile device. Now, my guests today are, they both write for children and young adults. Dianne Bates and Bill Condon are a husband and wife writing duo. They will be joining me in the studio today and chatting about their experiences as authors, and hopefully I can get them to reveal a little bit about the exciting new series they're working on together. I'll also announce the winners of our Meredith Costain giveaway, and I'll tell you how you can enter today's giveaway. So sit back and relax as I bring you the stories beyond the page right here on The Author's Shelf. You're listening to The Author's Shelf on 2SR, Sound of the Sutherland Shire. Coming up next, Dianne Bates and Bill Condon. Okay, now, thanks for tuning in. It's time to welcome my guests today. I've been looking forward to introducing both these guests. I've known both Dianne Bates and Bill Condon for several years now, and Di is a great inspiration to me and has guided me in many aspects of this industry. She's the author of over 120 books ranging from picture books to chapter and young adult. Dianne comes from a teaching background and didn't follow the path to being an author until her 30s, which is pretty remarkable, seeing she's now published over 120 books and she's only 35. Sorry, no, that was a bad attempt at a joke, wasn't it? I'm only joking. Anyway, she has published over 120 books. Anyway, anyone who's in the writing industry will have crossed paths with Di in some way. It's a bit like 6 degrees of separation. Di has won countless awards, including Writers' Fellowship Awards, the Australian Multicultural Children's Literature Award, Koala Hall of Fame, and the Lady Cutler Award in 2008. In 2010, Di's book Nobody's Boy received the CBCA Notable Book Award. Now, Di's partner in crime is the talented young adult author Bill Condon, who also happens to have written over 100 books. There's a lot of books in this one household. Now, Bill's introduction to journalism was by way of a chance meeting with a local newspaper editor. First, he tried his hand at jobs that didn't require qualifications, such as mowing lawns, cutting down trees, delivering parcels, training greyhounds. He worked in a milk factory, drove a forklift briefly before he went broke, was a professional punter. But that's all in the past, and Bill's work speaks for itself. He too has won a Koala Award, CBCA Awards, and been shortlisted for the New South Wales Premier's Award. But in 2010, Confessions of a Liar, Thief and Failed Sex God won the inaugural Prime Minister's Literary Award for Young Adult Fiction. Now to tell us more, here's Dianne Bates and Bill Condon. Di and Bill, welcome to The Author's Shelf.
Good morning, Georgie, and thanks for having us here.
All right. I generally put my guests in the hot seat. Di, we're going to start with you. Tell us, what is the Dianne Bates story?
Well, my writing story actually started when I was 29 and I had a life crisis. And I thought, my God, all I've done in my life is be a wife, a mother and a school teacher. What else is there to come? And I decided then at the age of 29 that by my next birthday I would have a book published. Which, while I was writing the book, I had the good fortune to meet Michael Dugan, the late Michael Dugan, at an Adelaide Arts Festival. And I sat in an audience where he said that he had only ever received 2 manuscript submissions to him at Paraphernalia Children's Magazine. So I followed him around for ages and then went up and said, "Excuse me, where do I send a manuscript?" And through Michael, I got my first book, Peggy Moss, published. And like you say, I've written many, many books. I've lost count. I write every day and I keep getting published. So that's it in a nutshell.
I like that. I keep writing and keep getting published. I love that line. That's excellent. Now, Bill's a little bit shy and we might have to coax him to speak, and he's actually hiding behind my monitors. I can't really see him. Bill, are you ready?
You make me sound like a possum or something.
All right.
It's great to be here with you, Georgie, because it sounded a lot better than my other option, weekend detention.
Okay. All right. I'm going to be giggling my whole way through this show. Bill's very funny. There you go, Bill. I've put you on the spot. All right, Bill, tell us, what's your story?
better give you the truthful one rather than more silliness.
Yes, please.
I did a whole lot of jobs like working in a milk factory and chopping down trees, whether people liked them or not. And then one day I wrote a play, and the author of the local newspaper, this is in the early 80s, the author of the local newspaper came to see it, and I got to know him, and I told him that I'd been working in a milk factory from 11 o'clock at night till 7 in the morning for 7 years, and all that time I wanted to do more. I used to sleep in a tunnel and there'd be rats scurrying around, and I thought this is going to be my life, and I really did want to try and do something better. And he said, why don't you come and work in the newspaper? And I left school when I was about 16. I was thrown out, I think, and I didn't have any experience with newspapers, but the opportunity was too good to miss, so I gave notice at my job, which was really hard to do because it meant security. But I did, and then I went to him and said, I've given my notice, Larry, in a week I can start at the newspaper. And there was dead silence on the end of the phone because he hadn't been really serious. He'd only just been talking, as people tend to do. But after a few weeks, someone was sick on the paper, and he said, come in and we'll see how you go for a day or so. And I ended up staying there 10 years. And all that time I was writing books and working on the newspaper is a great way of learning how to write, because you have to write so people understand it, simple sentences. And about the same time as I started the newspaper, I met Di, and she was a great influence and encouragement to me, because she was established then as a children's writer, and I'd never written anything for children. But Di was extremely kind, and she showed me how to write, and so that's how I became a children's writer. I worked at the paper, as I said, for 10 years, and finally, in the mid-90s, I quit to become a full-time writer. And like Di, I work every day and keep on chipping away and gradually get things published.
Great story. All right, as I mentioned in the intro, between you've written over 200 books. Now, we'll start with you, Di. Where do you get your story ideas from?
Everybody always asks that, and I never have any trouble getting story ideas. I mine a lot of my own experience. For example, at the moment I'm writing a junior novel, which I don't ever want to finish writing because I feel for the main characters in it. When I was in 5th grade, my teacher died, and I absolutely adored this teacher. So the story I'm writing now is not about death at all. It's about friendship and about a girl's relationship with her teacher. And right at the very end, the teacher dies, and the girl makes another friend who'd been an enemy previously. So it's a lot of it's truth and some of it's fiction. Oh, well, a lot of it's fiction. I've got a book being published in August this year called A Game of Keeps, and it's based on a relationship that Bill and I had with a little girl called Ashley, who we fostered. There's another book on a manuscript slush heap at the moment called Here Comes Trouble, which is based on a child who was one of 5 children whose parents were drug addicts. So it's people I meet, it's photographs sometimes, it's even been graffiti on a wall that I saw once, but a lot of it is my own experience and my own sort of emotional response to situations.
Wow, you don't worry about going for the real meaty subjects, do you? And we'll talk about some of your other more meaty subjects later on. Okay. Bill, what about you? Where do you get your story ideas from?
I go to the library and I look through the books and find stuff that I really like, and then I cut out the various chapters.
Oh, Bill.
And that's quite allowed. People think it's not, but you can only do it if you go to the look at the book, and if it says copyright, that means it's okay to copy.
Look what I have to live with.
All right. Okay.
But the serious answer is that I do exactly as Di does. I mine things from my own life. All my stories are based on things that have happened to me. I've had a very boring life, so my stories aren't all that interesting. I try and work on character and make them as humorous as I can.
You're supposed to talk up your books, Bill, not talk them down.
Well, let me say this as a positive thing. I like them.
I like them too.
And I like them as well. Bill, you might actually be the first guest I've had on that will leave me lost for words. Not many people have left me lost for words in my life, believe me. All right, I'm going to ask a serious question now. Tell me, do you obviously critique each other's work. Bill, is Di hard on you?
Extremely hard. She uses whips and things, but that's one of the good things about our marriage.
She's talking about writing,
I'm talking
Bill.
about
writing, right, yeah. No, she's a really good editor. She always tells the truth, which is a very hard thing to find. People will usually say in your family, they'll say it's wonderful, but Di will tell me when it's no good. And when I start talking to her again after that, I realise that she's right. Generally, she's very astute when it comes to editing work.
So I hope there's no food fights over the dinner table if she's been a little bit harsh on one of your manuscripts. You're not throwing things at her at the dinner table, I hope?
Not generally, no.
Okay. Di, you initiated many of the great writing publications that are popular with writers today, such as Pass It On, Buzzwords, and I believe you also started the CYA conference too. How important are these tools and resources for up-and-coming authors?
Well, I think all occupations require an investment in the tools of your trade, and so it is with writing. And I think going to conferences and festivals, especially when you're starting up, is important. Listening to publishers and published authors, and investing in magazines, whether they're online or in hard copy, that are about your craft. Magazines such as Pass It On and Buzzwords, which are online magazines, and Bookseller and Publisher magazine. If you're writing for children, yes, just invest your time, invest your money.
Now, we talked about this when you came in this morning. I was going to say you're working on a new site, but last night you actually launched your new site for Australian publishers. Tell us a little bit about that. Sorry, Australian poets, not publishers.
Well, it's actually Australian children's poets. It's a dedicated site because there hasn't been anything previously which nationally and internationally showcases the dozens of children's poets we have in Australia. And it's amazing that we actually have children's poets, because currently there's only one market for children's poetry in Australia, and that's the New South Wales School Magazine. Wow. Now, could I just tell you a little bit about why I decided to set this up?
Absolutely.
Way back in about 2007, when I had decided to compile an anthology of Australian children's poets and see if I could get it published, I was looking around for poets' contact details to give to the publisher as well as to give them my anthology. And what I discovered is that very few children's poets have an online presence, either through Facebook or websites or blog sites. And I approached organisations such as the National Library saying, where is there a dedicated site? And there wasn't one. So I always had it in my mind that there ought to be one. And if there's a need, I feel quite often it's up to me to fulfil the need if nobody else is going to do it. So actually that book is called Our Home is Dirt by Sea, was accepted in 2009, and it will be published next year by Walker Books Australia.
Great. Excellent. Okay, if you'd like to find out more about this new website that Di's created, you can email her at dibates@outlook.com.
That's right.
Now, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Di Bates and Bill. Thanks for joining me. I'm chatting this afternoon with authors Dianne Bates and Bill Condon. Bill, tell us about Confessions of a Liar, Thief and Failed Sex God. How did that come about?
I had the idea for many, many years, but I wanted to write about my school life. And the reason I hesitated for so long was because my school life was such a long time ago, and the things that happened to me couldn't happen anymore, and I was hesitant about writing a book that was set in the 60s. But in the end, I just wrote it. It was an interesting time because in those days, if you got into trouble in my school, you got strapped, and I was strapped nearly every day. One of the main reasons, I was a really quiet kid. I never really got into trouble, but I wasn't smart enough to realise that I was getting strapped for not doing my homework. and every day I would go to school without doing my homework because television was much more interesting. And so it's basically about going to a Catholic school in the 60s and getting into trouble a lot. At one point, and that I didn't write this in the book because it would be a different book, I think, another book. But at one point, I stayed away from school, WAG school, for 3 months. My parents went to work, my sisters went to work. So I was the last one at home, and I just stayed at home and ate my play lunch that my mother had made for me and watched a lot of television. And the brothers didn't inquire about where I was until 3 months later when they rang up and I answered the phone. And I still wondered to this day if I told them that I'd moved, if I could have got away with it.
And okay, I'm left with, I lost words, right? Okay. What age is this book for? What age group have you targeted with this book?
It depends on the maturity of the reader, but I'd say from 13 upwards, 13 or 14 upwards.
Okay. And we can purchase that at any bookstore and on your website. Do you sell them? No, you don't sell them on the website. Okay, you have them. You can get them at any bookstore. We'll tell you about Dianne Bill's website at the end of the show. Now, Di, what's your process for writing? Let's say a picture book. What's the difference between writing a picture book and a chapter book for you? Do you find one particularly easier than the other?
Well, I've only ever written one picture book, and that's Big Bad Bruce, because picture books, to me, are extremely difficult to write and to get right. So I've written one picture book, 3 young adult novels, and the rest of my fictional titles are for ages 8 to 11.
And what process do you use when you're writing, a chapter book or a novel?
Actually, this is interesting because I've got a blog called Writing for Children, and I wrote about this, the procedure. I'm a very productive writer. So the first thing I do is I decide what sort of book that I'll be writing. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to do a humorous chapter book for children 8 to 11 years, I then find a common theme. And Bill and I have been co-writing a series called Wild and Wacky Adventurers. So then you start asking yourselves lots of questions. Where will the stories be set? And in this series, we've got outer space, desert, and so on, the outback. We choose the location and a main character.
Right.
So setting and main character and situation all come in together. You give the character a name. If you want a humorous character, then you give the character a name like Captain Often Snotty, which is what one of the characters is called. And then I start actually writing the book. I create a title page where I've got Wild and Wacky Adventurers, a series of books for children aged 8 to 11. Then I make up a draft title, put our contact details, and then write chapter 1, and usually starting with action, dialogue, or description, something to immediately set the book's humorous tone and to hook the reader.
Yes, I know those instructions all too well. All right, Bill, now I'm going to put you in the hot seat again. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, tell us about your 100 Things series.
Okay, this is a series that was written in 11 years ago, whenever that was, 2003. And it's a whole lot of little facts, such as about 4 babies are born every second. Babies have been known to hiccup several hours before birth, and sometimes very loudly. So there were 2 books like that. That was 100 Things You Really Need to Know. That was just trivia. And then more specifically, there was 100 Things You Really Need to Know about geography. I didn't know anything about geography and still don't, but there was a thing. I've got a friend called Barney Google, and Barney Google, who's got googly eyes, he knows an awful lot. So when you're a freelance writer, as Di and I are, you have to learn to research, and we've taken a lot of freelance jobs about various things. I've done books on thunderstorms and dinosaurs and anything that comes along, because if we don't accept writing jobs we don't eat.
Okay. Okay, all right. Thanks for that. You're listening to The Author's Shelf on 2SSR 99.7 FM, Sound of the Sutherland Shire. We'll be right back after this short. Thanks for joining me on The Author's Shelf this afternoon. If you'd like to interact with us during the show, you can send us a message via our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Author's Shelf, or you can tweet us at The Author's Shelf. My guests are in the studio today and are children's and young adult authors. I'm tongue-tied today. Dianne Bates and Bill Condon. Bill, tell us, what's the best piece of writing advice that you've been given?
Kill your babies.
This is why I'm tongue-tied, guys.
No, that's serious. A writer called Glyn Parry told me that, and it means that anything that you're really fond of in your own writing, unless it advances the story and makes the story better, you kill it. You can't be too precious about your own work.
I agree with that.
Okay, all right. Di, what about you?
Well, it's like anything else that you want to achieve in life. You finish what you start. How's that for advice, Georgie?
I think that's she's saying something to me out there. Yes, all right. Yes, Di,
There's a bit of subtext there.
There is there. Yes, Di is actually my mentor, and I've been a bit slack, and I haven't gotten her my latest chapters. So I think she's trying to teach me something there, and I can't see her because I've taken my glasses off. So perhaps she's giving me the
and she's bleeding on the floor now.
All right, now Di, tell us first of all, Bill. You've got a new book coming out with Alan and Unwin, The Simple Things. Tell us all about that one, but don't reveal the ending because I haven't finished reading it yet.
That book is based on my own life, as everything else is that I write. When I was 13 in 1963, which will give you some idea how ancient I am, I went to New Zealand with my parents and my sister to see my ailing grandmother. And I never met her before, and she was close to 80. I was very shy, and she wasn't used to kids, so there was a bit of problems with communication. So that was the way the book started. The character, the boy meets his auntie Lola, and it's based on my grandmother, and also I've used Maggie Smith, the way she portrays her character in Downton Abbey. But I did a lot of silly things when I was a boy of 13, and they're all in that book. One of the things I did, which was pretty normal, I suppose, I locked my grandmother in the backyard toilet.
As you do.
As you do, yeah.
So that part of the book's real then?
That part of the book is real.
Oh, dear. Okay, all right.
And also, just before I stopped, I was mad about fishing, so every day after school I'd run around to the bridge, which is 5 minutes away, and throw a line in and try to catch my first fish. And I did, and it was very dramatic, a very dramatic moment, which is in the book.
All right. Okay. Now, Di, that's great, Bill. And like I said, thank you for not revealing the ending there because I haven't finished reading it yet. I'm about halfway through, and I'll be reviewing that book on Creative Kids Tales. Now, Di, tell us all about The Girl in the Basement.
Well, unlike something that comes from my own life, this book, the genesis of it was a photograph, and it was in a newspaper, and there was a story attached to the photograph, a Polaroid photo that showed a teenage girl bound and gagged, and in the background a boy bound and gagged, was found in a car park in Florida, America, and it was taken by the finder to the police and shown nationally because nobody knew who these two children were. And respective parents of the teenage girl and the boy came forward, and it was their first clue as to what had happened to their children who had disappeared at different times, different locations in America. And that story preyed on my mind for a long, long time. And then I started asking questions. What if somebody that I knew was kidnapped? Who would kidnap them? Or why would they kidnap them? Where would this happen? What might happen next? So that's how the book actually got started. And my own investment in the book is when I was a child, I felt very much restricted as the kidnapped girl is. And I actually always thought that My parents had adopted me, and I was always looking for my real parents. So I was able to use emotional context from myself when I'm writing about the girl in the basement.
I've read The Girl in the Basement, and that's, as I said before, earlier in the show, I talked about one of the grittier subjects or more meatier subjects that you've written about, and definitely The Girl in the Basement is, I think, very scary. Anyway, we're going to take a short break, and when we return, Di is going to actually read an excerpt from her latest book, The Girl in the Basement. Welcome back to the Author's Shelf. As promised, here is Dianne Bates with an excerpt from The Girl in the Basement. Di, take it away.
Thank you. The extract I'm reading is from the point of view of the serial killer who kidnaps the girl in the basement, and this is one of the murders that he commits in the book. The lobby is empty when he follows her into the lift. Already inside it is a plump, bald man with stubby fingers that press the buttons. Entering, he favours her with a conspiratorial smile, which she chooses to ignore. The lift doors slide shut and they begin their upward journey. He stands behind her, admiring the slope of her elegant neck and her bare shoulders, which have a bronzed polish. At the next floor, the bald man exits, the doors closing behind him. "I think it'll rain today," he says conversationally. The woman, if she hears, does not respond. Instead, she stares ahead at the doors, awaiting her floor. He has been following her for days, having discovered her home address, an easy assignment given his cunning. During the hours when he was not working, he shadowed her. He discovered that after her husband leaves their apartment, she regularly comes here to visit her mother. Today is the first time he has allowed her to see him, though doubtless she has taken scant notice. It suits him that he remains anonymous, a nondescript man in the city, one of thousands. The lift continues to rise. The time has come. He is in no way apprehensive. Indeed, he is experiencing a thrill of anticipation, the moment of exhilaration approaching and the pleasure awaiting him. "Ma'am," he says, touching her shoulder with his gloved hand. She turns and he smiles. A look of puzzlement crosses her face, but is replaced by surprise, then shock, as he grabs her and twists her body so her back is to him and her throat at the edge of his knife. He turns her head for a glimpse of her slanted green eyes and thick red lips, and then he swipes the blade across her pretty white neck. She gives a low, wet moan as the weapon does its work. Her body pitches forward, crumbles, and thumps in a heap on the elevator floor. Blood pools quickly around her head, spreading in the dark fan of her hair. He sees the fifth floor panel is unlit, so he punches the button. The doors open and he steps into an empty corridor, activating the top floor button as he leaves. Then calmly, his mission accomplished, he walks to the fire escape door and down to the ground level, where he re-enters the lobby, which is filling, and makes for the street. Within the hour he will be home again with his darling Serena, his despicable boss a murderer. Serves him right.
As I said, very powerful story, that one, and I can't recommend that book highly enough. That is The Girl in the Basement. Now, for your chance to win, to go into the draw to win a copy of The Girl in the Basement or a copy of A Straight Line to My Heart, all you need to do is type in the code word onto our Facebook page, which is inspiring. Today's code word is inspiring. Type it into the comments on our Facebook page once we've put up the book promos, and I'll pick a winner and announce two winners actually on our next show. You are listening to The Author's Shelf. To chat more with Dianne Bates and Bill Condon in just a minute, you're listening to The Author's Shelf on 2SR 99.7 FM. Good afternoon. We're almost out of time this afternoon. I'm chatting with Dianne Bates and Bill Condon. Bill, what do you love most about writing?
Getting paid.
That's good.
No, it's great to be able to just go into my office instead of catching trains and buses and driving through traffic. Go into my office at any hour of the day, sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning, to work from home, to be my own boss, and it's a great reward to when things are accepted, when they're published. So I'm very lucky and very privileged.
Di, what about you?
I feel very privileged as well. I think it's a real blessing to be your own boss, to be able to boss words around on a page and not be bossed as an employee.
Now, you told us a little bit about the series that you're working on. Did you say the series had a name yet? Or
Yes, we're calling them Wild and Wacky Adventurers. And
how many books in the series?
Well, there's 9.
Wow.
We haven't written them all, of course, but so far we've got titles like Captain Often Snotty and the Giddy Giddy Zombies, Tassie Wallaroo and the Abominable Snowman, Young Drung Wung and the Water Whopping Volcano as just a few of the titles. I might say that we've made one submission with a writing proposal, and that was rejected last week, so we're looking again for another publisher.
But as you well know, you get lots of rejections out there and you just got to keep going and going and going.
I had 46 consecutive rejections at one time.
Wow. That kind of would make you want to...
You have to believe in yourself, you really do.
You do. And leading into that, okay, are you an emerging author or illustrator? Are you serious about taking that next step on your creative journey? Why not visit creativeKidsTales.com.au? There you can have a full author or illustrator profile, including displaying your work, networking with others. You'll also find useful tools such as a comprehensive publishers listing, writing tips, competition information, author interviews, book reviews, and a whole lot more. Visit the Creative Kids Tales website today. What are you waiting for? creativekidstales.com.au. I've been chatting with Dianne Bates and Bill Condon today. Di, what's the best piece of advice you can give up-and-coming authors?
Well, start with what you finish, I thought, is the most important. But you really have to believe in yourself. I think you have to read widely in the genre for which you're writing. You need to write regularly and persist. And I think of all of these, the most important is to persist with what you start.
And she's looking at me when she says that. Bill, a parting word from you?
My parting word comes from Vincent van Gogh. It's actually more than one word, but I suppose that'll be allowed.
Okay.
He said, "Great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together." And that's how it is with writing. You just write one word at a time. You don't think of a 40,000-word book. You just do what you can today, make it the best you can.
Hallelujah.
Absolutely great advice there. Thank you very much, Di and Bill, for joining me today. Now, don't forget, for this week's giveaway, for your chance to win a copy of Diane's book, The Girl in the Basement, or Bill's book, A Straight Line to My Heart, pop over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Author's Shelf, and tell us today's code word, which is inspiring. I'll pick 2 winners and announce them on our next show. Now, Dianne and Bill, thank you for joining me on The Author's Shelf today.
Thanks for having us here, Georgie.
Thanks,
it's been
Georgie.
fun.
If you would like more information about Dianne Bates and Bill Condon, you can visit their website, enterprisingwords.com.au. Now, that's about all we have for this afternoon's edition of The Author's Shelf. We'll be back again on the 23rd of March with author Anna Branford. She'll be chatting to us via phone, this time not live in the studio.